everyone. My name is Mara Huber, and I'm pleased to continue to bring you my Be Brilliant video series and offer some strategies and tools that you can use for your community development work or initiatives. Today, I want to talk about the idea of being nimble, or how to reset your organizational movement when you feel stuck or maybe not as effective as you hope to be. I'm going to be doing this by sharing 5 design elements in the modeling process that will collectively allow you to go back and do some readjustments or resetting work. Okay, I want to start briefly by discussing the first element, which is context. So we all know that our work is surrounded by layers of context. I think of it as sort of an ecosystem. And we usually do a good job looking at the context that is most important to our work when we get started, right? So we start our initiatives based on needs or gaps in the communities around us. But I want to point out that there are also layers of context involved with your internal world. So certainly your boards of directors, your volunteers, or the communities that you serve influence your movement. And any time that you're feeling unstuck or out of alignment, you need to go back and look at the context involved and really develop some sensitivity to when these are significant enough to warrant an adjustment. Okay, second design element includes your core commitments. Now these often involve your mission statement, maybe your visioning work, other branding initiatives that you've gone through that help you sort of frame out what it is that you're going to offer and what it is that you're going to promise through your work. Your core commitments are absolutely critical, and anytime the context shifts, you need to go back and make sure that they are still relevant. And just a quick note that when you're examining your core commitments, they need to be clear enough to really help guide you through opportunities and threats, but also they need to give you enough room to be innovative and to adapt. So you have to make sure that they're not too specific, but again, clear and resonant enough to define your space. Okay, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the third element, which I call drivers. The drivers are the expectations and needs of the audiences that are really important to your work. All right, so we all begin our initiatives thinking about key drivers that are important to our communities. So we often look at gaps in education or achievement, maybe healthcare, maybe skills and competencies of workers, or outputs of innovation or startups. These are important to our communities, but also important to funders and also volunteers and people who are looking for opportunities. So it's not surprising that many community development initiatives focus on these. But over time, there are other drivers that can become really powerful and can actually shift our organizations in directions that maybe we don't want them to. So for example, your board members, they have expectations and needs that can influence the direction of your work. So why do they come to the table? What is it that they're seeking, and what do they need to stay engaged? What about the community that you're serving? Are they driven by the same types of priorities that your funders, or are they needing something else? So really being sensitive to those needs and expectations around you to make sure that your focus continues to be your core commitments. Because anytime these other expectations and needs become powerful enough, they can actually become drivers and they can shift your direction. And you can find yourself trying to manage those expectations rather than continuing with the work that you've committed to. Okay, the fourth element is your programs. I think of these as treatments rather than programs because they are the way that we are enacting our commitments and our promises, right? And they should be based on clear hypotheses. They should be really thought through in terms of how are you going to know that you're effective, measurement and assessment. And your programs really should be the place in your model that pivots and changes and adapts and innovates the most. This is where movement really happens. And yet, often we think that programs should be sustainable, and certainly the people who implement them want them to be sustainable. And so even though programs are supposed to be sort of that place where you have flex and change, often this notion of sustaining programs becomes a driver for the entire system. And so we really have to manage expectations about programs and how they're going to adapt. Okay, the fifth element involves the structures, all right, including infrastructure. Now notice this is last, not first, right? The structures have to support the programs which enable you to fulfill your commitments, which exist within these changing contexts. And so the structures really have to also be nimble, and they have to align and really be connected with all these other elements of your model. And yet we often do this completely the opposite, right? We build the structures first when we decide we're going to start an initiative. We invite the board members, we create the positions and the descriptions, we create the offices and the different layers of infrastructure. And then as we go after new grants and opportunities, we layer additional infrastructure. And over time, the structures actually prevent your organization from being nimble and relevant and resonant and sustainable. And so we really have to think about structures differently, and we have to be willing to put them back into alignment and not start with them. So if you're going to go through that refreshing or resetting work, you have to work through all of these elements and then think about changes in structure that will enable you to move. Okay, so getting stuck hopefully isn't very surprising, because when you look at all of these elements, they're places where your system can get out of alignment. But the good news is that resetting involves working through the same processes and doing the tweaking to ensure that all of your movement is geared toward the work at hand. Ideally, if you're going to design a new system or a new initiative, you actually build in this ability to be nimble, right? You manage expectations, you make it clear that there's going to be constant reevaluation and tweaking, and that structures will change to sort of align with the work. But many of us have to do this work along the way, oftentimes when you're really feeling stuck and maybe things have gone a little bit further than you had wanted them to. So you can sort of announce the fact that context has changed and that this resetting work needs to be done, and then work through these design elements in the order that we've talked about until you sort of can get to those structures. Once you do the resetting work, you can invite everybody in to be part of this newly clarified and aligned system. But again, their ability or their invitation to be at the table has to be to align with the work rather than the other way around. I hope you found these tools and strategies useful. I look forward to bringing you more, and I ask that you can continue to give me feedback on what is most helpful, because we really do need all of your collective work to make our communities stronger and more empowered. So thank you. Bye-bye.